Hey everybody, I am back with a new comic book review. This one's gonna be relatively short. It's only like 3 issues of this particular arc. I wanted to talk about like a few months ago when I came across it. Well, it probably wasn't even just a few months ago. It was, you know, around the time of the second season of the Loki TV show. And did you know the first uh comic event, or at least kind of mini or whatever you want to call it, where we are introduced to the Time Variance Authority, the TVA, hey y'all, was in a She-Hulk comic. Now, only covered the first 3 issues because that's like the major uh influence that the Time Variance Authority was heavily involved. Now, they show up in sprinkle stuff here and there throughout Marvel Comics. More recently, in a Spider Gwen or Ghost Spider comic, we get Gwen uh, teaming. I won't say a team up, but she is associated with Ouroboros or EB or OB. I'm sorry, OB, which you saw Qui Kihi Kwan. I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right. In the Loki season 2, and she pretty much like her social worker through some kind of shenanigans with the multiverse or some kind of thing. So now she has to stay in the Earth 616 for the time being. I don't know. It's like I'm struggling to like get on board because they Marvel's struggling to try to find some kind of footing or what to do with Spider Gwen, and honestly, not sure if they just want to shove her like Miles, shove her into the 616 so she always could be around and teaming up with Peter Parker whenever, wherever. But this is not a Miles situation, in my opinion. Getting off tangent, but I'm just gotta voice my opinion while we're talking about, TVA personnel. Gwen is doing fine in her own universe, just like every other Spider person outside of Miles does fine in their own respective universes, dealing with their own crap. They don't all need to be shoved in the Earth 616. Because I think people are just getting tired of the Spider-Verse team-up stuff, and I think that's been done to death. The first event was phenomenal. I covered that on the channel. I gave my thoughts on that. So check that out on my YouTube channel, which, by the way, please like and subscribe. Follow me in the links in the description below. Like my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkingofcarl, or you can just click on the link and you can see my review on the Spider-Verse event. But back to She-Hulk. So this is what should have been the She-Hulk show, in my opinion. As I go through these first 3 issues, if you read the first 3 issues, this She-Hulk comic is made in 2005 by Dan Slott, and this has honestly should have been like what the TV show should have been, especially if you're dealing with multiversal stuff and with Kang and everything like that at the time. This could have is easily been like a nice little thread to link everything all together, and including with lawyer stuff, which She-Hulk is a lawyer. And it's kind of crazy that the writers behind the scenes did not do a very good job in getting some lawyer to consult to make sure the courtroom stuff is on point, because that is the main thing about She-Hulk that we all, besides her gamma powers, is she's well known for. And it's kind of wild uh, that was lacking. I mean, uh, the Daredevil show did like a little bit better job, according to lawyers who watch scenes from Daredevil and She-Hulk. They all say, despite the shenanigans with Daredevil, who isn't like showing up to work properly, and all the other stuff that kind of interfering with his day job, the courtroom stuff when it is playing out is handled very well, for the most part. But here it's not so much, and I can see what they're driving at. Excuse me, I want to get everything up here. Okay, good. All right. So, yeah, I mean, you guys should check this out. It's like a long running arc in like 30 issues or so. I only want to cover the first 3 issues, which is its own singular arc. I tried to get into, because I read up to like 10 issues, a few months back, just to see how long the TVA is involved with this particular run. But so far they haven't really been interjecting that much as far as I went into the run. So I figured I will focus on the first 3 issues of this particular arc. So She-Hulk is working at this new law firm, not unlike from the TV show, where because that's part from the TV show got done very well, is obviously in the world of superheroes, they need to change up the laws in order to fit certain superhero, supervillain type of crimes to still fall in the framework of the law. So She-Hulk is we see a little cameo with Cap and Spider-Woman. She-Hulk, not too long ago, Marvel went through some kind of situation. Jen usually goes through some kind of like personal issues and stuff like that. Right now, she is using this thing, Doc Samson, another gamma-powered superhero, but also is a well-known therapist, which, like Harley Quinn, needs to be brought to the forefront, especially you see characters like Bucky going to see a therapist. Would have been a perfect opportunity to introduce Doc Samson into the MCU, because we only saw like a cameo of him in the first Hulk one, but the Incredible Hulk, who was played by the guy from Modern Family. I think it was Modern Family. I didn't see the show, but I recognized the face, and brought him in order to help these superheroes dealing with their little personal stuff. But anyway, he invented this little gauntlet, like wrist-mounted thing to help her, control when she shapeshifts into She-Hulk. Because, prior to this, when her first introduction, she loved the She-Hulk persona, where she mostly stayed in that form because she didn't like her human state. Like I said, she always got her personal hangups in her normal life, where She-Hulk felt like a like a safety net or a crutch or something like that, where she's like, I'm comfortable here. I can always stay like this. People respect me, love me, and get all these accolations. She, at a certain point, she was like a supermodel for a while. That kind of thing. She loved that, being She-Hulk like 24/7, and she got into a lot of relationships throughout her career. She even banged the Juggernaut. And not too long ago, she banged Thor for a brief moment. I think she banged Luke Cage at some point. It's all been like it's been like a series of relationships. But you know, in like a recent uh tragedy where she kind of lost control of herself and caused this kind of wreckage, which we'll get into soon, where she felt so guilty that she just decided, I can't be She-Hulk no more. I need to be Jen Walters. So now, uh, after foiling a mugging, Cap and Spider Woman asked, like they at this point they are reassembling some Avengers, and they want to bring in some new recruits because Avengers, especially recently, at some point after the Marvel Judgment Day event, or Marvel's Judgment, which is a Marvel event, is like one of my favorites, that heavily involves the Eternals. And I didn't put on my list of favorite comic book events, but that's one of them. And after that, the Avengers stuff has been like, slow dragging a lot. They've been like, obviously they gotta reassemble some brand new roster of people, and as a matter of fact, they try to coincide with what's going on with the MCU, because they got Robbie Ray as Ghost Rider and Blade on the roster for a time, because they've been trying to push Midnight Suns in the MCU, right? They still struggling to make a Blade film, even though it's a vampire movie. They don't need to go through all these rewrites and different writers and directors. It's a Blade film, and I think because they trying to, like, I don't want to say DEI, but the studio won't let the directors write what they want to write. They gotta probably fit some kind of narrative that won't fit in the framework of just a common vampire movie that's R-rated. You fight vampires, that's it. But then also the poor actor who played Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show for like a season. From reports, they told him, like, keep your schedule free as possible because we want you at the ready. This is years ago. Outside of that last Terminator film, we haven't seen this dude. I'm pretty sure he's still working, but like, we haven't seen him in anything major for a while, because he's probably waiting on that freaking call from Kevin Feige. Like, yeah, we need a Ghost Rider. We're calling you up. Get ready. It's a mess. It's a real mess, and like, it's no. And I feel bad for these actors who, by and large, just want to act for the acting's sake, and they can't get any freaking jobs right now because they waiting on this, that, or the third from these studios. Anyway, Jen tells Cap, like, yeah, you got my number, I'll think about it. So she starts the what's this office called, because it's like a long ass name. Goldman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm just going to call it the law office because that is a long ass freaking name. And so we meet these, like, oddball characters with crazy powers all over the office, which could have been something like in the She-Hulk show, where you see, like, outside of the clients, more oddball characters roaming around. And it could have been something like The Office or Parks and Rec, the way they could have made that show, where she spent most of the time in the office and in court. But one of her First cases is for this old man, uh, Charles Sawaski, and he's been accused of murdering a man on the street in broad daylight. And Jen obviously doesn't want to take a case because it seems like it's just like a normal case to handle. And on top on that, uh, it's been captured on photograph in the newspapers, circling news outlets and on TV and all this other like social media and stuff like that. They got him dead to rights, but her uh law associate named Pugsley. I was gonna call him Pugsley. It doesn't. I'm pretty sure it's not pronounced Pugsley. It's Pugsley, something like that. It's just, I was gonna go with. They call him Pug for short, but I was gonna say Pugsley. And clearly he's smitten with Jen. I never seen this character before, but he's obviously got a thing for Jen. But he's just like your typical friend zone dude. She's actually at this current point in time hooking up with John Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson's son, for a brief period. And Charles explains that this guy was destined to kill him in the future. So he decides he need to kill him now. And it turns out his company figured out a form of time travel. And he's been using it to connect with himself in the past to gain stock tips and to enrich himself. So this is like a funny thing because you want to integrate Jen Walters' fourth wall breaks. Here's another thing, because they sometimes, depending on the writer, they fail to remember that She-Hulk can break the fourth wall too, but not excessively. Well, depending on the writer. I mean, I'm pretty sure her early stages she probably did it excessively, but they kind of tempered that, especially after the introduction of Deadpool. They kind of tempered that with Jen to a certain extent, where depending on the writer, they can just go full-blown Deadpool with it, or Jen Walters with it, or they can probably bring it down to a level. Because if you see She-Hulk featured in somebody else's comic, you don't really see that all that often. Where if Deadpool shows up in somebody else's comic, he still will do that. So that goes with a stark difference with his characters. But here, because like in the TV show, they probably should have. I don't know. I think I'm about to say they could have tempered that, but I don't know. Looking back, I think they had like a right balance of that to a degree. But here in the comic, in this panel, they want to, since they're dealing with time travel, and this is going to be like a time court or time case related, they go into their office, to a office that house a bunch of comic books dealing with all types of things to reference. It's kind of like law books when dealing with a particular case that might be similar to a case of old that they can, research and use to help with a current case. That's what they're doing with these comic books right now. And they bring up Kang and Immortus, which are the same person. And of course, they don't know that. So they trying to figure out, okay, like, there's a thing, reminiscent of what Kang did in issue, blah, 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 blah. So we need to look for that. But then she realized, Pug brings up that her boss that hired her isn't in. She goes to see this new guy who's stepping in for a while named Zix, and he shows a recording left by her boss mentioning that he's out looking for, I think it's like Texas or Mexico or something like that, looking for his daughter, Southpaw, some kind of super character. And Jen knows the girl and was wondering like why he never asked me to help. I could have easily get up and go help out looking for her, but he expressed in the recording, "Look, I know you uh, uh, see this girl as a friend, but I don't have any real leads right now. I'm just going by speculation. Once I get something concrete, I will send for you. But right now, I need you there." But then Jen gets some rumbling happening into the building. Jen She-Hulks out and deals with a fight between Vision and Stature, which you could easily have connected in the TV show, because I didn't know which came first. I'm pretty sure Ant-Man came first before She-Hulk. So you could have fit in Ant-Man to She-Hulk, another through line here, because, they could easily have done this. They could easily have, synced everything perfectly in the MCU, but they didn't get all their ducks in a row. That is kind of bonkers to me. You got Ant-Man's daughter here with Vision, mind you. Of course, it's not white Vision. It's a whole nother thing, but you can at least in the show incorporate it, Stature, to have everything, feel like a shared universe, with interconnectivity. So Vision and Stature are meeting with lawyers, one for their side and the other for the defense of Boomerang and this guy Ox. I'm pretty sure it's Ox, who busted their like some kind of warehouse gun shipment or something or other, but they didn't have, I guess, probable cause or something or other, where it's like unlawful entry or something of that case. And of course, Stature being like a very young. I don't know if she's like a legit teenager here. You could easily argue she might be in her 20s, but she kind of goes off the handle and causes kind of fight. Jen breaks it up, and of course, both parties apologize and everything like that, and go about their way. Because it brings, the Mallory character who's defending Boomerang mentions, because she has a kind of like a bit of a grudge or a rivalry against Jennifer, because Jennifer kind of ruined one of her cases years ago, and also stopped some supervillain situation that ultimately ended up her temporarily, I think, in a wheelchair. Because I think Mallory showed up in a She-Hulk comic recently. I fairly remember that. So she was actually walking around. So this is temporary. But she just kind of got like, a chip on her shoulder when it comes to She-Hulk. So she brings up that because of her, now these supervillains can cry something like, unlawful search and seizures, something like that, for without particular like a warrant. It needs like a warrant, like a lawful seizure, but they never really bring that up in any type of comic unless you're dealing with something like She-Hulk or Matt Murdock dealing with villain and and superhero cases where they bring up something like unlawful search and seizure or whatever. It's you know they don't have to always bring it up or reference it, but it just seems like they come up with stuff in these kind of books, but never really like make that a hardline thing in all of comics. We don't have to do it in every comic because like Doctor Doom not gonna. Well, every time you bring up something like Monarchs, like Doctor Doom or Black Panther, they don't adhere to certain laws of other countries. But something like the Shocker or something like that, trying a case against Spider-Man because hey, he broke into my thing, he didn't have a warrant, and he beat me up, and I was minding my business. He didn't have any proof or anything like that. He could have do something like that, and have it brought up again whenever, let's say, Daredevil is done with a particular villain, and he's like dealing with Stiltman, and it's like, I got these are trumped up charges and unlawful search by Daredevil. You should throw the case out and kind of thing. I'm saying it should be like a mainstay instead of just like, I guess, one off, because how's anybody supposed to care? Like I said, it wouldn't be very interesting if like whose villain can like well, I don't know. It's just like you gotta have something or other to make this like a legit thing. Whenever a new case is brought up, and not saying like a new law, but a new case is brought up where it affects a degree of the Marvel universe. So she goes see Doc Samson, and you see her like getting hung up about what happened with Vision, because we got like at this point in time like a brand new Vision with new. He has memories, but not to this. It's not technically the same Vision, even though he has all of Vision's memories. It's like a new model essentially with brand new / old memories, where Jen is apologizing to Vision about what happened before when she kind of went all savage and busted him up. But he mentions like, there's no need to apologize, Jen. The model that you're referencing is not the model you're speaking to now. Even though I have his memories and his data and everything like that, I harbor no ill will against you. That sort of thing. But she also is still beaten up about what happened with Hawkeye, because at this point in time he is dead from one of her like kind of savage rampages. So she kind of feels guilty about that, which is like reference from earlier Marvel comics. You can look up Hawkeye and one of his like earliest deaths by She-Hulk. I'm pretty sure it brings it up. But Doc is letting her know that you're putting too much weight on your shoulders. Not everything's your fault. Things tend to happen. You know this. And sometimes it's completely outside your control. You only deal with if you're dealing with a villain, things tend to happen. And it's like you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. Then next day, Jen meets up with her partner Pugsley, and he brings up that Zix somehow, him and their boss have some kind of connection to the T.V.A. Since it's like a time-related crime, they contacted the T.V.A., which in this case will be, or at least one of the officers will be Justice Peace. And you get this his partner Justice Love. Like, I'm not sure why they all got the first name Justice, but maybe there's some kind of like code name type of thing. because in the TV show, all the people working there have names, but they have no memory of their lives prior to the TVA, nor do, like you saw from Mobius, he doesn't necessarily care because he doesn't want that rattling, like he mentions in the show. He doesn't want that rattling around in his head, and that will, compromise what he has to do. Excuse me, compromise what he has to do with his job. And I honestly do not enjoy the look of this version of the TVA. Honestly, look like literal SWAT officers or something like that, with overly exaggerated stuff going on. Like, it was like a hat on a hat. It was like trying to look like a Punisher meets Captain America. And it's like, that is way overdone. And I think they kind of went past all that. I'm pretty sure every time we see TVA, and if they are shown in current comics, they don't look like this anymore. Thank God. I think they actually look more like people in suits, and I think that's in part thanks to the TV show. Where, well, no, scratch that, because the people on the boots on the ground actually do have similar look to this, except they don't use guns. They use these staffs that kind of erase you, and they don't have the red, white, and blue color scheme. They just look like regular officers. So the theme, well, at least like the outside of the colors and the weapons, the costume is pretty much spot on for what they got going on in the MCU. So what they're struggling with right now is trying to find a jury of their defendants' peers, since they can't get a proper jury to be impartial, because the news outlets were circling this murder. Well, it's not even a murder. The person is attempted murder, because the person, Charles Slott, is lying in a coma right now. So that is circling around news outlets everywhere, so everybody knows what happened. So what the TVA is doing is getting jurors from a different point in time, in order to, who haven't seen this circulating, bring them into the present, so that can at least 12 people, so can have 12 jurors. And unfortunately for Jen, she gets shocked to see that one of the jurors is Clint Barton, Hawkeye. And she at first wanted to speak up and say something, because since she knows one of the jurors, as Pugsley put it, you got to recuse yourself, because you can't be a part of this if you know one of the jurors, which is correct. But her primary concern, because she's still hung up on the fact that she caused his death, literally a year ago. But she decides not to, because she figures like, oh, if I still remain in the case, it gives me a chance to warn him before he goes back in time, so that way he can save himself. While the jurors are requested in a hotel not too far from the court office, Clint sneaks off, finds his gear in some kind of warehouse, and goes off, and because he didn't like to be cooped up, and he starts saving people, stopping muggings and break-ins and stuff like that. And each person brings up, like, at least tries to bring up the fact that they thought he was dead, but of course he ends up cutting him off, like, Like, but I thought you were taller. Yeah, I get that a lot. Like, but by the end of the night, when he gets back to his hotel, Hawkeye kind of comments like, everybody's acting so weird right now. And it's kind of like, you can let that go because you can easily call it, man, that is, very convenient. Where it's like, oh, guys won't shut up and he keeps cutting people off. But I guess this has to play out because you can't mess with time, even though a lot of people are messing with time right now. And the next morning, Pugsley notices, because she's sharing like it was some kind of situation where like there's like these people who work at this law office, a lot of them live in this kind of shared apartment building, and there was some kind of disaster that happened where it kind of messed up a particular row on inside the building where a lot of people have to double up, and Pugsley is rooming with Jen. But unfortunately, since she's in a relationship with John, it's not working out in his favor. And the fact that he literally has to hear her probably bang John probably doesn't hurt. Probably hurts a bit of his ego a bit. They end up literally like sharing like a breakfast table with each other. But then he notices she made a letter. He literally calls it a Back to the Future letter. It's like, are you seriously going to Doc Brown this situation? You cannot give him this letter because clearly it's a letter warning Hawkeye about his impending death. And of course, Jen isn't concerned with the consequences. She'll accept them gladly because she wants to save Clint Barton's life. So the case is carrying on, and both lawyers make their opening statements, and it comes, and they realize, from this John Doe, they call the person in the hospital John Doe because his facial features and dental records and fingerprints doesn't pick up on any of their systems. So it's making it hard to identify this person. And we bring up Justice Peace as one of the witnesses, and brings up about this scrambler machine that some people, this is the only time they actually bring up about a scrambler in tie with a time travel situation, because he mentions anytime somebody's going to use a time machine to avoid being recognized by anybody, they go through the scrambler that changes your appearance and your fingerprints and all sorts of like things that can identify you as you. So that's why it's to avoid any potential threat to the space-time continuum, which has never been a thing in time travel, anything, movie, TV show, or otherwise. They just obviously created this for this particular reason, as you'll see towards the end of or at least not too far away from this first part of the arc. And while Jen is trying to do her thing, she's walking towards the jury pool, which, mind you, lawyers in real life are not allowed to enter the well, and definitely not approaching the juror or the witness stand, because you will be tackled by the bailiff. You got to ask for permission to enter the well from the judge themselves before you move away from your particular desk. And that's something that I learned from my Legal Eagle. There's like a very fun fact. So anytime you see that in courtroom proceedings, whether in real life or in TV shows or movies, if you see them walking in walking around willy nilly. They're not supposed to do that. And when Jen walks up to the jury pool, and she's literally in front of Clint Barton, and she's trying to, charade and hand sign, and leave like subtle cues for Clint to warn him, because you can't like outwardly say it while the TVA is literally present. She's not being very subtle, as Pug points out, and he's like face palming himself, like, can you make it any obvious? And she's literally like, it's like, she put it like, let me repeat that. Well, die, in case it falls on deaf ears in the near future. And of course, being Clint, he's not picking up on any of this. He's just like very like, whatever. He's just like there. But then Pugsley noticed one of the other jurors that he recognized as an officer, a legit police officer, and he goes to the newspapers in the obituary section, and he pulls Jen over because he asked the judge, like, Your Honor, might have a minute to defer with my partner. He pulls Jen to the side, and he whispers to her, like, did you notice something about the jury that we have right here? And she's like, no. Well, they all have one thing in common. These people will be dead within a year. They all died last year. That's why they were specifically selected, and it wouldn't be any problem for the TVA to pull them from, because since the whole case hinges on a impartial jury, who's more impartial than grabbing somebody from the past who won't have any consequences in the near future once we deliberate and things like that. It's kind of like the situation in the TVA, or at least the Loki TV show, where Lady Loki, Sylvie, hiding out in apocalypses because, whatever she does there doesn't matter, and the TVA won't be able to pick it up because that's going to be erased from existence anyway because of an apocalypse. So it wouldn't really matter. As Loki would say, it doesn't matter. So Jen has to, go, I guess, in a different direction with this. Because she's still hell-bent on letting Clinton know. But then Charles is called to the stand, and we see this kind of like window box thing where he has been contacting himself to pretty much this corporate espionage, is trying to like, gain information about certain stocks that will be financially beneficial in the future, so that way he can gain some wealth. And in one of the monitors, he gets a call from a guy saying that somebody's gonna shoot you, Charles. Somebody's gonna try to take you out, and the image and the dialogue is roughly fuzzy, but he got enough to know that, oh, someone's gonna come after me. So he gets information on who is gonna, or not who is gonna be, but it's like where the person gonna be and things of sort of that nature. It's like he gets like it's enough information to know where he needs to be in order to shoot this guy before he gets at him. That's it for this slide. But as he's given his answers, he subtly calls in a robot mechanism. It comes bursting through the courtroom, and while Hawkeye, the TVA, and She-Hulk deals with this thing, Charles makes his escape in order to use the scrambler and then use the time window machine in order to cause I guess they had like a spare or something like that, because they brought one in the courtroom. So I was wondering maybe there's like a spare that the laboratory had. Uh, okay, one second. Perfect. All right, but She-Hulk is determined to make sure this letter gets to her friend. So as Charles is sending a warning through time in the past to let himself know about the danger approaching, because it's John Doe, could easily wake up and uh, still carry out his mission to take him out. He's like, oh, I gotta take him out first, so all this will be irrelevant. But after he sends the message, he realized the reflection of his face from the scrambler is the same one from John Doe. Then he realized, oh my God, I'm the one who sent this all circulating in motion. Then Justice Peace shows up behind him and it's like, yep, that is correct. And it's like, wait a minute, you knew this? And you let all this go into motion? Why would you say nothing? Because I'm an officer of the TVA. Whatever going on throughout time, I gotta let it play out the way it needs to play out, and you have a duty yourself, sir. So he sends to make sure there's no paradoxes. He sends Charles in the state that he's in into the past, so everything goes into motion where it needs to go. I like this whole James Bond thing going on, where he's literally plopped into the position where he needs to be, so past Charles can go and shoot him to let time play out. And you'll wonder like how everything's gonna play out in the present day. I'm assuming he's still in a coma, or if he ever got out of the coma, everything works out well, or at least goes back to normal, I guess. Or at the very least he's fired from his job because his bosses are none too happy that him abusing a time machine essentially to leave messages to enrich himself. And before Jan manages to give the letter to Hawkeye, Justice Love ends up sending all the jurors back to their respective time. But then Jen gets arrested by the TVA for attempt in tampering with time. So here you get to see, the offices of the TVA, literally bureaucratic offices. You got people literally working behind desks and everything like that, just like in a TV show. They come across time cells with people who done harsher crimes against time, put in time cells where they're in mini time loops, and you get to see Tony Stark's brother Arnold Stark, who literally is dressed up in the type of, mind you, this was made in 2000. This comic was made during 2005. Uh, Arnold Stark. If you've been reading, Iron Man in 2020, the main villain that he was dealing with was his brother Arnold Stark, who was wearing like the most ridiculous looking Iron Man suit that I ever seen, with literally shoulder pads that is giant gears. So I thought it was kind of funny that somebody remembers how that looked and probably pointed out from this She-Hulk story. Maybe I like to think so, because I really have not seen Arnold Stark outside of a mention in a Iron Man story where Tony was in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and news dropped that he had like a secret brother. And then in 2020, Iron Man run, that he was a lot more prominent. But outside of that, never really seen Arnold Stark in a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I'm shocked they really have not really like lean into making him like a prominent Iron Man's Rogues Gallery. Because somebody on par with Iron Man's intellect is a incredible villain for him. Unlike something like Justin Hammer or Obadiah Stane, who are smart in their own right, but not on the same degree as Tony. So this one gives Tony a run for his money. Very James Moriarty type of guy for Tony Stark. And Justice Peace and Justice Love also brings up to Jen that the Avengers are probably like the worst offenders against time, considering how many times that, they even mentioned that y'all even worse than even Kang, because y'all, go through time, y'all end up recruiting people outside, the present day to be part of your present day Avengers and stuff like that, completely messing up the time space continuum and stuff like that. And which also leads into one of your members, Mockingbird, killing one of the time displaced people who was made part of the Avengers, unbeknownst to Jen, who wasn't privy to that at all. And then she brings up about like the Destiny War, which was something that made Rick Jones, which is like a Hulk supporter character, a prominent role in that particular war thing, which they bring up, which I looked up. The Destiny War was like a 1999 event. I wasn't really familiar with that Avengers story. But there's other stuff that they're going to be referencing that Lily, Marvel did a good job of remembering that, and Lily brought it up years later. But I'll get to that pretty soon. And besides, the people in the time cells, as I mentioned, they in like a mini time loop, and you have Arnold Stark saying things literally seconds after the other because he doesn't even realize he's in a loop. And it's like, you never, you can't do this to Arnold Stark. You can't do this to Arnold Stark. You can't do this to Arnold Stark. And he doesn't even know he's in a loop. So they're literally in those time cells until the TVA decides what to do with them. But Jen's going to be getting like a potentially harsher crime. It's kind of like the death penalty on like an ultra scale, where if found guilty of her crime for attempt to tamper with time the way she was going to do, she will be erased from all existence. So they make sure that, Jen, because Jen asked, I want like the best lawyer, from my firm. So the TVA decides, okay, yeah, we'll get you the best lawyer from your firm. So they end up getting this superhero character I never was familiar with named Southpaw. It's literally a woman with a giant gauntlet, which is very bottom of the barrel type of character that I'm not sure how many people even know of her. And it's literally 15 years from now. And Southpaw is the woman, her real name is Sasha, is the daughter of her boss that he was looking for in the present day, and 15 years from now she'll become part of the firm and one of the best lawyers uh in, because she's like 15 at the time while she was being looked for, but now she's in her 30. Now she's 30 years old and uh one of the best lawyers of this particular firm. uh so they end up plucking her 15 years in the future while she and her partner, her particular sidekick, is battling this guy named Clockwise, who used some type of time suit where he literally uses dinosaurs as like his henchmen type of people. It's like giant pets essentially. So when Southpaw got plucked from the time, this particular time, he sees like, oh, this is like a unique time signature. So he piggybacks off that and he ends up in the TVA and decides like he sticks around to see like, how he can exploit this for a bit. And they literally, getting Jen set up for trial, and it's like, well, we need time to, I need time to defer to my lawyer, and it takes a while, guys. And they tell her, don't worry, we're in a TVA. Time is irrelevant here. We already not only plucked her and a bunch of witnesses and juries and stuff like that in different points of time, put them in a pocket, time frame, for like a couple of weeks, so that way they can all be prepped. So, once we get into this courtroom, they already are ready. So don't worry about it. So, and I want to make a point here because the art here in general is terrible. It's like, well, let me go back here a little bit to give you like a, this is good. You look at Jen's face right here. That is not good. Hardly any of this art is any good, in my opinion. It's like barely any lines. It's very low effort art. It's like very blasé, blank face there. No emotion to this, especially when Justice Love explains how messed up the Avengers have, or callous the Avengers have been when it comes to time travel. And she's just like, just like she's pondering. It's like the art in this is not very expressive. The colors is just okay. None of it is like really stands out in terms of best art use. Then they switch all up, where I would have been okay with this particular arc. Still not the greatest, but I've seen it before. I would have rather this than what I see previously. And literally at the last image of this particular arc, no, remember, the last image, and there's a different other image I'm going to pull up, where I would have rather seen that throughout this entire run than what I've been seeing so far. So she walks into the courtroom and she sees her father, all the Avengers plucked from particular points in time in the past, so none of the trauma or other ordeals that they would have gone through from what, like at least a year or two ago. So she sees a bunch of people that she knows from her personal life and the superhero community. And she literally, and it's like, and they called her, the TVA called her out on it. It's like, she runs to Hawkeye, who's literally in a crush right now from a ordeal prior to the event that will cause his death. Janet and Wanda, before she went freaking crazy. It's like, she literally runs to them like, Hawkeye, I gotta let you know that, you are gonna, like, well, let me get this, accurate here. Years from now, Clint, you sleep with Jan. Jan then makes you drink a lot of margaritas. Wanda, drunk Jan says something that drives you crazy, and then you start killing everybody. So whatever you do, don't sleep with Jan. Don't drink the margaritas, and Wanda, get some serious help. And first and foremost, they start laughing at her, which is an odd thing to do considering the second point. You're in a time court. You was literally from just like a panel ago or a page ago was expressed that y'all had like at least a couple of weeks in like a pocket time bubble to prep, so you'll know that you're time displaced. So you know time travel is like a thing. So when she's trying to warn you what's going to happen in the past, you're laughing at her instead of being a little bit more concerned. And of course, I get it. From a story standpoint, you cannot ruin things, what's going to happen, especially with Wanda, who will be the result of a lot of characters' death, including Hawkeye, where she, right before she does No More Mutants, she, caused the death of Clint. And then Clint dies a lot. And it's like darn near like the Charlie Brown of this thing. But they laugh at her. I was like, God, yeah, I get it. You can't screw up what's going to be pivotal in future comics, but still, it's like laughing would, but it would have helped and wouldn't have took too much effort for the writers to point out. It was like, okay, don't waste your breath, because they all going. By the time we send them back, they all gonna end up losing their memory. So what you tell them now, it won't matter. They could have just done that. So that way it could be a lot more concerns. Like, oh my God, what are you talking about? It's like, at least like show like a little more concern and not straight up laughter. But like I said, the TVA immediately calls her on it. And it's like, see, Your Honors, she can't help herself but screwing with time. She's literally doing it in our faces right now. Which is a shame on Jen, where she's so, I get it. She's emotionally, distraught. The fact that her close friend is dead and she was somehow like the catalyst. At least she feels like she was the catalyst. So, like, Southpaw has to bring her to a side, like, as your attorney, I advise you to shut the fuck up. And then we get to see the three justices. One of them being Paradox. This guy named Paradox. They all like different time points of the same person. And the other one is named Mobius. And the last one is Ouroboros. Now, of course, long before the MCU and long before the Loki show, they're all the same person. I'm pretty sure, like I mentioned earlier with the Spider-Gwen comic run that's starting recently, that you see an Asian version of Ouroboros trying to match up with the Loki show. I'm pretty sure if they do Mobius in current comics, he'll look exactly like Owen Wilson, which I would like for the comic book industry not to try to align so similarly to what's going on with the MCU. I'm perfectly fine if they do something with Mobius and the TVA, they don't look exactly like Owen Wilson. I think we can all live with that. I think it's a little bit different because for a time they make, Black Panther look very closely to Chadwick Boseman. Now, I excuse that a bit because I think that's mostly because of like honoring the actor, and they want to make sure like kind of cement him forever with this comic or this character that he made so prominent and a big deal. But something like I'll let Iron Man slide too, because he can make him look like Robert Downey Jr. because of his hurdles in his personal life that he overcame, and how like he is just like a representation of a person who can turn things around from bad, terrible habits and brought himself out of the gutter as a success story. And one of his, that granted him like the proper role of Iron Man. So I guess you can make Tony Stark, cement him to look like Robert Downey Jr. for the rest of the days of comics. But we don't really need Hawkeye to look like Jeremy Renner. We don't really need Scarlet Witch to look exactly like the Olsen girl, Elizabeth Olsen. We don't need that. There's a few exceptions here and there, but by and large, you don't need it all to look exactly like the people we see on TV. Anyway, we also see Monica Rambeau involved in here. And the Fantastic Four, etc., etc., etc. So, and this part gets under my skin because, like I said, I watch a lot of Legal Eagle on YouTube, and outside of besides the whole, entering the well and how wrong it is when lawyers do that, another thing is less annoying but still annoying to a degree is the fact that bringing up character witnesses. Now, depending on the case involved, by and large, bringing people up as a character witness isn't something that lawyers typically do because we're not speaking to the person's character. The character is not on trial here. I'm pretty sure the guy would mention, if he read this particular comic, he would bring up the fact that, okay, Jen is being charged for attempting to tamper with time. And she's in danger of being erased from existence. Now, I get it. Since that is in danger, these people are bringing up why, losing her would be, a terrible thing. But if she's erased throughout all the time, you won't even remember her. So it would be kind of irrelevant bringing somebody to speak to her character. The real thing is to focus on. The question is why should we keep Jen in time instead of erasing her from time? But so a lot of the heroes bring up the fact that how she saved the day countless of times, and she's like an honorable person and a just person and great lawyer, things of that sort. But Justice Love, and here's another change of artwork. I would have rather had this been the main art as well, because it's more pleasant to look at, in my opinion. And Justice Love points out that, yes, we get it. She's a hero. She had her valor and sense of justice isn't being called into question. As a matter of fact, all her deeds, if you would just do slight changes in the time, she could easily have been replaced with many other heroines, and they would have done almost the exact same thing. Like Lady Sif, they use Lady Sif for example. The last person I fairly recall, but the person in the middle I don't really recognize her. But Justice Love points out, it's just by a little change in time, the same feats that Jennifer did could easily been done by literally any other woman with super strength. And this kind of embarrasses Jen, God, F me, I guess, damn. But then Hulk comes into play, and you gotta have the Hulk involved in this because this is his cousin we're talking about. And this is during the point where he's smart Hulk. So he walks up and says what he needs to say. It's I want to speak from the horse's mouth on this one. Uh, I've heard some pretty stupid things today that all of my cousin's good works could have been achieved by others. That's bull. Know why? Because I'm the Hulk, a curse on myself and humanity. But when I gave Jennifer my blood, I didn't just save the life of someone I love, I had a hand in creating a hero. And there are days I feel that that's the one thing that made my life worthwhile. So if she were suddenly erased from my world, that will make me angry. And he crumbles the witness stand, and he says, "And you wouldn't like me when I'm angry." Everybody's just dead freaking silent because they know what he's capable of. And Justice Love tried to sugarcoat it like and blow that off as like, we'll give him a puppy, he'll be fine. And Softball was like, oh yeah, that will solve things. Cause yeah, this is like his literal family. Isn't that like Rick Jones or his girlfriend, which he would be angry about? But the fact that this is his cousin, his family is the one good thing that came out of his. I mean, because we all know the Hulk had like an abusive father and stuff, and Jennifer is like his like anchor pretty much, and outside of like his relationship with Betty and his friendship with Rick, Jennifer is like is just as special to him. That he really risked everything to save his cousin's life in that car wreck, and the fact that he somebody endangers her to the point where to keep her from existing, the level of anger will be beyond reality. It's like I would not test that theory, but I love this panel. It's probably like my favorite page out of the 3-issue arc. This one really spoke volumes to me, and it's one of my favorites. But then Justice Love points out that how Jennifer will be like a danger in the future, and Jennifer doesn't understand like what's going on. Why is this such a big deal? So Justice Love pulls her into the future where you see this reckoning war, which, as I mentioned earlier about like referencing events in comics, this event did come about literally 15 years from this comic book run. They literally had this sitting on the shelf for exactly 15 years. The level of like patience and memory, like they literally put it on like a board or something for like, or at least in a case or a safe somewhere, where it's like, make sure that you pull this out 15 years from now for a comic book event. And in 2022, there was a Avengers comic event called the Reckoning War. It was like a cosmic war involving like the Watchers and everything like that. And Jennifer was a part of that. And Just Love points out like, I'm not sure how crucial she was to this event, but apparently enough where Justice Love thinks she was like a prominent domino effect. So she brought it back to the courtroom, and Southpaw is saying like, I'm sorry you had to see that, Jen. There's a lot going on at the time. Trust me, you weren't at fault with that. Look, there's gonna be good times, there's gonna be bad times. But Jen is like, you know what, erase me from time. I can't. If that's going to happen in the future, then it probably helps if I don't exist at all. But then, as the other TVA members bring out this massive, like, they call it a ret can gun. Not retcon, ret can. And that's where Clockwise made his move as he disguised himself as one of the TVA soldiers and attempts to erase Jen from all existence. And of course, he ends up, causing like this big ruckus with all these superheroes attempting to stop him. But two very, very minor characters named like, Nightman and Mr. Rocket or something like that gets hit with the beam, and nobody remembers who that person is anymore. But I'm not sure like they even brought those people back. As a matter of fact, let's look it up. Let's cause I imagine, because they're so bottom of the barrel type of characters, I don't even think they will be missed. So it's like whatever, because they don't want to hit somebody like Cyclops or Wolverine, obviously. Nightman. Okay, from the Marvel Wiki, Nightman was a superhero associated with the Avengers until he was accidentally erased from all reality by the reactive cannon. Reactive cannon. I said they shortened it to retcan, but obviously it was like a fun thing where it's called like a retcon. And the artist mainly was like Juan Boblio, just so y'all know, the main artist. But honestly, man, maybe he had like other good, stuff that he worked on that fit the overall narrative, but this was like not it, honestly. So like they just like made up certain characters just to be erased, so they don't really matter ultimately. But they end up stopping him thanks to Jen, who steps in front of Southpaw and says like, sure, you're gonna have to erase me before you can get to Southpaw, but think about this: if you erase me, then here and now, then she won't become who she that will cause all this to be irrelevant. It means that you won't even be here to get this gun, and this caused him to have like a, it's kind of like a like how you trick a robot with like a contradiction. He's sitting there like, wait, okay, wait, no, because, oh, wait. So while he's thinking, this gives Jen the opening to like knock him out. This is just like a lame character, honestly. Honestly, like, clockwise. Like, outside of this, anybody ever use clockwise? Uh, let's see for this particular slide. Yeah, one more slide to do. It's going to be relatively fast. Oops. So they end up putting clockwise in a time cell, but now Jen ends up rescinding her guilty verdict. But then Pug ends up talking with Southpaw to give her an idea, where she then calls us a few more witnesses on Jen's behalf, and she ends up requesting all the people that Jen ever saved. So yeah, that part was a good thing. It should have been like the main thing, in all honesty, because if you wanted to call into question her right to exist. It's kind of like the whole It's a Wonderful Life situation, in which every superhero would should take note of this, that without any of you, there would have been so much death and destruction on a mass scale by various villains from large to small, that would have caused epic problems. So Jennifer has saved many lives, not even just on Earth, but a few alien races here and there. Whenever she probably had, adventures out in space, she has caused massive. She saved massive amount of lives, which the judge, who's the last one that didn't get shot by the rat can gun, which was Mobius, and of course Ouroboros ended up coming back, but now he looks like Ke Kwan. So then we see in the crowd is Jennifer's boss, the one who was ended up looking for Southpaw in the first place. Is sitting there in the back, proud to see her, his daughter, winning a case and everything like that. It was like a good moment. And I think this is probably where he ends up meeting with the TVA, so he have always like a contact with them, because maybe he's pulled from the past, so that's where they end up getting that little connection, so they can have like that case with that Charles guy. They never confirmed that, but I like to think, since he's here, that could have easily been like a good circular connection with all this. So the TVA ends up sending everybody back to their respective timelines, while Jen high fives the Wasp. She ends up grabbing hold of a letter meant for Clint, unbeknownst to everybody else, which maybe that helped with Clint avoiding a potential death or something or other. Maybe, I'm not sure. But it's like a very Doc Brown situation where he still, even after he ripped it up, put it back together, it feels like, what the hell? So it's a nice little way of Jennifer still getting what she wants, having her cake and eating it too. So it's like, sure. I would have preferred if she still haven't been able to give that letter and let things play out where it needs to play out. Because this is a superhero world. People come back from the dead plenty of times, and many a times people make references and jokes about that. So yeah, everybody goes back to their respective time, and before Jen goes, Mobius mentions that even though you're not going to be erased from time, you still got to be, there's still going to be consequences of what you tried to do. So this leads into a whole nother arc in this run where she is supposed to help out this other former Avenger, this cowboy. I forgot his name, but she ends up, helping him out, integrating him into modern times. Since technically he was like a lawyer in the Old West, but law has changed since then, so he has learning new laws and getting his law degree, which kind of like happens pretty fast because it takes years to get all that kind of stuff. But as a comic, they kind of excuse a lot of crap. But anyway, Jen ends up thinking Southpaw. It's a nice little funny moment where it's like, Jen thinks like she inspired her to become like a hero. It's like, oh no, that was some other hero. So like, oh, what about a lawyer? It's like, no, that was my dad. Like, oh, but you did inspire me to become a better person, Jen, and that really warms her heart. So, in the end, with this is the last panel, a way better art design here that could have been like the main art throughout this entire run. Honestly, or at least in this this particular arc, 3-issue arc, where we see one of the lawyers pouring through old She-Hulk comics, and it's like, hey, Jen, like in this comment they said like you used to like break the fourth wall. You don't really do that, do you? And she looks at the reader as like, oh no, I don't. So that was She-Hulk meeting the TVA. It's a fun event, and it's like fun to see the TVA in like a major story, and I kind of wish we do more with those. I'm shocked, honestly, that Marvel Comics have not had some kind of writer come in and say like, I got a story. It was just the TVA, not teaming up with anybody, but just dealing with crimes of people messing with time, or at the very least, since at the time we're dealing with Kang the Conqueror, that they trying to track down Kang and put a stop to his machinations or something like that in a particular comic adventure. They could have done something, but they just have not been using the TVA. And it's like, man, they is primed to have their own comic. I'm shocked they didn't do anything. Because there's a cool concept. The TVA is a cool concept you could have easily used in a particular story on their own, going there with Mobius teaming up with Ouroboros as like, you know, like a Lethal Weapon type of thing. Or literally like Time Cop, as a matter of fact. Because there's literally, you know, a movie called Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And you can easily have something akin to that where these two partner up, stopping, you know, various people messing with time. Where it's like some people, like they saw in the first season where Miss Minutes talks about, matter of fact, bringing Miss Minutes as like their like AI, kind of like Lila with, you know, Spider-Man 2099. It have like Miss Minutes as a little AI little gadget, or like their Skeets or something like that, like from Booster Gold, where it's like helping out with like investigating crimes in the past or present or future, where somebody veer off on their particular timeline and making a different branch in the timeline and putting a stop to that. Why you haven't done anything like that? Because that's a cool concept. Whatever. But that was She-Hulk meets the TVA. The next comic book I will be getting into, going back to DC, because I've been lingering on Marvel for quite some time, so I'm going to give Marvel a bit of a break while I'm just going to go through some DC material. A couple of which is going to be Batman related, because I want to go through the Nightfall series, the 3 volumes of Nightfall, like Nightfall, Night's Quest, Night's End. I'm probably going to make them separate videos because they're very long, respectively they're kind of long, so I can't do it all at once because that's going to be like just another kind of like a major long thing. So I think it's best to do it separately. But that is the next one I want to do, because I never really gone through them in their completion. Like I read parts growing up, but never like from front to back. So that will be the next thing. So whenever I'm done with one, I'll go right into the review of that, then go into the next one, go right into the review of that. And speaking of Batman, in a few minutes, I'm going to go do a review of Batman Beyond Season 1. So look forward to that. And yeah, take care. Have a great weekend. Let me know what you guys think of She-Hulk. Do you agree this little arc should have been the main Season 1 of the She-Hulk show instead of what we end up getting? Leave a comment, let me know, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.